We, one way to describe this is that you're seeing a series of recommendations that are more revolution and a series of recommendations that are more evolution. With regard to the revolution, which you see as a real identification of the fuels problem that we have here in Oregon. This is fuel accumulation due to land use changes, land management changes over the last century. Climate change, is only so much, if anything, that we can do here in Oregon about climate change, but we can certainly do a lot about the fuel loads that we have in the state. And so big part of the surge or the real urgency is around landscape level mitigation, so landscape level fuel treatments. Second one would be immediate defensible space around structures to provide greater focus and attention on reducing that level of vegetation. Third would be building codes, basically hardening homes. Fourth is better resiliency of the power grid, and Scott Bolton has already discussed that. And then the fifth is looking at suppression, continued suppression, as a stopgap. And so you kind of look at this into the totality, a real heavy emphasis on fuel reduction at the landscape level, defensible space, hardening homes, hardening the power grid, if you will, or making the power grid less vulnerable, and then increasing suppression. The second group would be more the evolution, and this would be more reorienting existing and mature systems in the state to better reflect the fact that we have a new reality with regard to wildfire. This would be evolving health systems, emergency response systems, disaster recovery systems, our land use planning systems, the cache management at the Oregon Department of Forestry and with the State Fire Marshal's Office, Oregon State's fire research, and finally the Keep Oregon Green program that's been around for a very long time. So again, these would be more the areas that are mature. Most of them are pretty high performing, and they require reorientation just given the fact that we're dealing with a lot more volume of fire. And finally, I just comment on what the expectations are for the council report. Again, as Jason mentioned, we're now going to be taking these committee reports and really synthesizing them together into logical packages, into logical alternatives for consideration. We're going to screen each of the recommendations according to expected benefits, including co-benefits, expected costs, expected timeframes, and risks. And so we're going to have a very disciplined process through which we're going to rigorously analyze each of these recommendations. And probably the single biggest screen is what is consistent with Oregon's values. What are we trying to create? And when we're talking about natural resources, these in homes and the communities where we live, this is so much of part of Oregon's fabric. And so we're putting a lot of thought into how we do things, because things can be done in very, very different manners. And then finally, and a big part of our emphasis going forward will be looking at funding strategies, and looking at equitability, trying to identify sustainable funding sources and also funding sources that do recognize who are the beneficiaries of our various policies, and really to try to align funding with the beneficiaries to the extent we can. So there's a lot going on. It's been a tremendous experience. Again, the volunteers, willingness to really kick in here over the last several months has been very encouraging. In many ways, I think Oregon at its best.